Paris from Board Game Geek. I'm here with Gil Hova from Formal Ferret Games, taking a look at his
Hi,
latest
everyone.
release, High Rise. Hey, Gil,
Yes.
it's good to see you. I remember stopping at your table at Gamma Trade Show back in March and being really impressed by the table presence of High Rise. So I'm excited that I've had a chance to finally play it a bit, and
Yeah.
I've been enjoying it. But yeah,
Awesome.
can you kind of give a description of what everybody's doing in High Rise and how it plays?
Yeah. Yeah. So in High Rise, we're all construction moguls, and we're in this city, and we are trying to build the tallest skyscrapers. During this game, you will get your hands a little dirty. There is a corruption mechanism that lets you do
Oh yeah,
extra stuff, but you could get punished if you lean on it a little too much. So you'll see that
witness.
around the table there's a bunch of spaces. This is a one-way track game. If you play games like Takedo or Glenmore, that's like a similar thing. So, for example, you'll notice that there's a red pawn, like a red mogul, in the bottom left of the board. And that mogul can go anywhere. Since that mogul is furthest behind on the track, it's going to be their turn first. So they're going to go ahead, and let's say they're going to move forward to the first available spot, the spot with the red diamond. So let's go ahead and move that spot there. So, yep, right over there. So what that spot means is they can now go into the gray bag, and they can look in the gray bag, and they can pull out a red floor. So in the bag, there's 5 colors of floors. There's a red floor, and they're going to add that floor to their construction yard. Construction yards are the little mats in front of you. Yep.
Right.
So we're gonna add it over there. Incidentally, that mat has both the shipping firm tile and a shipping firm card. It should only have the shipping firm card. Let's return the tile back to the board. Just so yeah, the tile should be right back on the board in that first open spot. Just return it to the board in the
Top
first
left of
open
the
spot.
board.
Yep.
At the top left, further up
Yep.
to the right.
To your right. To your right. To your right. To your right. There it is.
Yep.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, because that is a space you could land on. So now Red's got this red floor. Why do they want a floor? Because of the blueprints. You'll notice in the upper left, there's 2 little cards that tell you what recipes you need to construct a building. So Red, for example, has we're going to look at the 2030 blueprints. Let's look at the other card, the other blueprint card, because that's the 2030 card. Let's look at the 2020 card. Perfect. Okay, so that card, if we can we get a close up on that green screen overlay thing? That would be awesome. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Nice.
So you'll notice on the left that indicates that you need a red floor, a blue floor, and a black floor to construct a 3-story building. And then the next one, you need a purple floor, a red floor, and 2 gray floors to construct a 4-story building, and so on. Now, the last 2 ones, the 2 on the right, have a green icon on the top, and that is a special resource called ultraplastic. And this is a revolutionary new building material that has 3 properties. First off, that ultraplastic icon is wild. So what that means is you can use any color floor for that. So that 4th from the left, the 2nd from the right, needs a blue, a gray, a red, a black, and any color you want can fill in the 5th slot. The second property is you notice that we have that ultraplastic token, and that token is wild. So that token can stand in for any resource. But the third thing is if you use ultraplastic as ultraplastic, you get an extra floor in your building. So those wilds can be really useful. That 5-story building will suddenly turn into a 6-story building if you use the ultraplastic as ultraplastic. And the other thing is if you are the first player to construct a blueprint, you get an extra floor in your building as well. So there's ways you can sneak extra floors into your building, and that's important because every floor in your building is 1 victory point. So when you get a 7-story building instead of a 5-story building, that is 7 points. So that's half of the game right there is how you'd use those blueprints. And yeah, there is a 7-story building, and you see there are these lovely components. And so those buildings, when you construct them, there's spaces on the board that let you construct. instead of getting floors. And you're going to put them out on the board in one of the diamond spaces, and you're going to get the power of whatever tenant that you place the building on, because all those buildings are connected to those little tiles. So when you land on those or when you build on those, you get those powers. So it becomes really interesting about like which powers you activate through moving, which powers you activate through building. And if somebody lands on your building, you will actually get to draw a random floor from the bag. And there's the other side of the blueprints. It's like a cheat sheet that has all the icons that you need. I see people are asking if the game is available. Yes, the game is available. You can buy it off of various stores. You can also buy it from my website.
So Gil, it might be a nice time to mention, I was going to say, it might be a nice time to also mention that if you don't build in the corresponding construction zone area, you have to take corruption.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about corruption. So, yes. Each of the I'll get to the construction bits of the boat. Thank you, Candace. That's a good reminder. Let's go back to that space I went to that let you get the red floor. Underneath that spot, there's a little icon. It's hard to see from this angle, but what it says is it's got a random floor icon and a little like briefcase, and the briefcase is a symbol for corruption. So what that means is you can choose to take a corruption and draw a random floor from the bag. So that random floor is going to help you for building, but corruption, if you have too much corruption, you're going to get penalized at various points in the game. Now, if we want to jump, let's jump the blue piece over. Let's jump that blue piece over to the shipping firm. That's the space with the red building. Yep, let's put it right over there. It's gonna go right on the tile. It's gonna go on the tile, not on the building. The shipping firm
tenant tile.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Not that one,
Nikki.
Nikki.
The tile that says shipping firm. You're just going to put it right on top of that tile. So there's a tile that says shipping firm, the one that you just placed.
There you go.
Right
there you go.
Perfect. Okay, so blue's going to go there. And so what that means is blue's going to get a card that says shipping firm now. It says take a shipping firm card if available. So blue's going to get a shipping firm card, and they're going to put it in front of them. And what a shipping firm card does is it gives you a power that if you ever draw randomly from the bag one time in a round, you can draw randomly from the bag again. And all sorts of buildings have these tenants that give you various powers, of which the shipping firm is one of them. So that's what blue did. Blue went to grab a shipping firm. Now, there's another thing that happens here. You'll notice that blue passed over those sets. I'm pointing at the screen like everyone can see. Blue just jumped over those two spaces over there. Those are bonus spaces. So when you jump over a bonus space, you have a choice. You can get everything from one space or everything in the other. Now, there's one space that shows an ultra plastic and a random floor. So in that case, you would get that if you move the ultra plastic tile that's on the black square, on the black bonus square. Yeah, just move the ultra plastic. There you go. Okay, so that's an ultra plastic and a random floor, so you can get that. And there's a space that's printed on the board that would normally have two random floors in the bag drawn on it. So that would be your choice. You'd either get the random floor and the ultra plastic, or you'd get the two random floors. Whatever you take, the next player has one less thing to choose from. And I'm assuming that this is a 3-player game. The third player would get nothing. So there is a bonus for jumping out ahead. You get better stuff if you're the first one to jump ahead. Now, I want to point out one more thing. You'll notice that the space I landed on, the space that let me get the red floor, is connected to two other spaces, okay? So the space the space that red landed on, I should clarify. The space that red landed on is connected to two other spaces. That is a zone. So I landed there. Let's say everybody else shoots past me and it's my turn again. In most games like this, I could go dink and dink and dink and take all of those. In this game, I can't. Those three areas are connected in one zone, and I can only do one action in the zone. So actually, this game rewards big jumps. So it's not just about like the little moves because everybody went ahead of you. You really have to plan in advance what trade-offs you want to make. Okay, if I'm going to take this, that means I can't get that. And it opens up some really interesting decisions. International availability. Right now it is English only, I'm afraid. It was a relatively small print run. If you go to Games Lore, if you're in Europe, you can go to gameslore.com, and they will have European-friendly shipping. I'm exploring other options to have the game available, but you can always ask your local game store and see if they have a distributor that carries it. And I hope that answers your question, Ruckus. Awesome Stranger said, Battle Merchants is one of my all-time favorites. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, cool.
Nice.
So that is a quick, just really quickly getting into like what the various spots do. Now let's say it's Red's turn. Oh, one more note. Blue landed on Red's building. That means Red would get to draw a random floor from the bag. And that's one of the advantages of getting buildings out is you get to draw floors from the bag if somebody lands on your building.
And you could also, Gil, you could also, I was going to say, you could also, if you land on your own building, you could also do that draw benefit, but you have to take corruption. So there are lots of moments in this game where you can get bonuses, but you have to risk taking more corruption.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of times like, oh, well, I can do that, but what are the consequences? So now let's say the red spot is going to go to the first available construction spot. That's going to be the first spot with a crane on it. So red's going to go to that first spot with a crane just past the, there we go, perfect. And that would let red construct. Now, hypothetically, we're putting it there. In reality, we wouldn't be able to go there if we weren't actually able to construct a building. Like right now, red doesn't have the right pieces to construct a building. But just for the purposes of this demo, let's say that red has the pieces that they can construct. So at this point, they can take floors from their construction yard, return them to the bag as long as they match blueprints, and then pull out the appropriately sized buildings and score that number of points. So if red were able to turn in a black, a blue, and a red, hypothetically, like if that gray was a black instead, they could get a 4-story building. 3 because it's a three stories they're turning in, and 1 because they're the first to construct that building. And that would give them 4 victory points. They'd get a 4-story building, they put it in one of those lovely bases, and then they can put it somewhere on the board and get the appropriate power. Now, they can go in East Gardens, which is the neighborhood we just passed, and as Candace said, if they go there, they get no corruption. But if they go anywhere else, they get 1 corruption. So you have your choice of what power you want to get. The question is, do you want to get corruption for it? And that's part of the interesting decisions. And there's that area in the middle, the city center. You'll notice you can't land on any of those spots, but you can always build there. It's always a corruption to go there, but you get some super nice powers in the middle. Like, for example, that spot we went to is the obelisk, and the obelisk always gives you 3 extra victory points. So
Gil,
in that case, you get 3 bonus points.
Could I jump in and can we talk about what happens when an area is filled with buildings and you go to construct the demolishing? Because that's definitely one of my favorite parts.
I'm learning more and more about you each day, Candace. So what happens if, like right now in this example, the city center is full. I think it's full of 3-story buildings. Or 5-story buildings. We got 2 5s and a 4. Perfect. Okay, so you can still build in city center even though it's full, but you have to construct with a building taller than the shortest building. You blow up the shortest building, but the person whose building you blow up gets to draw 2 random floors to the bag, and they don't lose anything else. So getting your building blown up is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of times it gives you that crucial extra floors that you need for the next construction. Where it does get in the way is at the end of the round when everybody's made a full lap around the board, you get a bonus for tallest building. So it could be 2 for tallest building, 1 for second tallest if you're playing the intro game. And then in the last round, it's 3 for tallest, 2 for second tallest, 1 for third tallest. So you could be deprived that extra point if somebody blows up your building. So that's something that players are sort of jockeying for, and another reason why I want a tall building is you get the bonus points for tallest building.
And then there are a lot of the tenant powers or some of the bonus cards that you'll get throughout the game that'll give you the ability to potentially add floors when you're constructing. Like there's the penthouse card, I think it is.
Yep.
And
Yep.
excuse me,
Penthouse
there are a
lets
couple
you
of them.
add 3 floors. You turn them in from a construction yard. You can add 3 floors to any building on the board. So
Right.
there's some moments where it's like, okay, well, I know I'm currently winning in this neighborhood, but they've got a penthouse card. They can beat me if they use the penthouse card there. So what do I do? So
Right.
some
Right.
really interesting decisions there. Um, so so somebody is asking if there's any game changes in a two-player game. In a two-player game, you still use this side of the board. You'll have a third pawn, and something interesting happens with the third pawn.
Yeah.
The first player goes, the second player goes, and then the neutral mogul goes. And the second player starts the game being able to control the neutral mogul. That second player can either move it to a predetermined spot, and then they lose control of the neutral mogul. It passes to the other player, or they can take a corruption and move the neutral mogul to a spot they want and use that action.
Take the
But they
action.
got to take a corruption for it, one corruption.
Right.
So there's some things you can do in the two-player game that you can't do in other player counts, because you can do these really interesting chains with the neutral mogul, because you might be able to get 2 turns in a row. It's a question of how much corruption are you willing to handle.
And then also with the solo game, you have the neutral moguls
Yes,
with
there are 2
kind
neutral
of a
moguls in the
similar,
solo game.
right?
But the solo game also really penalizes you if you take too much corruption. So
Yes.
that's so you can take that corruption and get use all the neutral moguls you want, but then you might get buried in negative points if you did that too much. Now we just saw a glimpse of the extra construction yards. The thing about the extra construction yards is if you ever overflow on your construction yards, you notice you have 7 spots that you can hold floors on. If you ever need an 8th spot, you can get a construction yard immediately and start putting your overflow floors there. The issue there is if you do that, you get corruption. And it depends what round
Right.
in the game you're in. If you're playing the
Right.
intro or the standard game, you start in 2020 and you'd have to take 2 corruption, but you get to keep the construction yard for the rest of the game. If you take it in the
Right.
final round in 2030, you only get 1 corruption. But still, it's corruption. It's a decision. Do I take the corruption? Is it going to be worth it?
And also, there are some tenant powers that will benefit you for having multiple construction yards.
Yep. I've tried to put
So
a bunch of little carrots in the game. Like every little thing has an effect somewhere else. There's some really cool things you can do, and some things that you'll be like, wait, I can do that? Let me see that rule book, But it's like, oh, wow, I can do this, So, can I put multiple
Right.
spires on a building? Yes, you can. Can I put multiple
cool.
elevators in a building? Yes, you can. And those have really big powers at the end of the game.
Yeah, another thing to note.
Inches is.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, someone's asking how tall in inches is the tallest building. I would say it's a little over a foot. It's about a foot and change. Sorry, you were going to ask.
I've yet to see anybody build a 15 yet, but
I
was
see
just
people
going
build
to.
16s and 17s.
Wow.
What happens
Okay.
there is there are these pieces called spires that you can get. You just put a spire on top. Let's actually show a spire. So the thing about these spires is some things in the game let you get spires, and they're 2 virtual floors to the height of your building. So you don't score those as points immediately, but they count for tallest building. So you can put a spire on top of a building, so that 5, as far as tallest building is concerned, is now a 7. And also when it comes to demolishing buildings, that's also considered a 7. So that might save your building and keep it in that neighborhood.
Right. But when you build it, you're only getting the 5 points. Yeah. But when you build it, you're only going to get the 5 points for it, right?
Yes, you're only going to get 5 points. The spires are virtual floors because you can't actually go up the spire.
Yeah. What I was going to.
In the spire.
Right. True. What I was going to note was I really like how each of the areas has so many different tenant tiles, and you're only playing with, 3? I think even on the other side of the board for a 4-player game, I think, is it still 3 per zone? Or is it 4?
It's
I don't
3
remember.
per zone in the standard game. It's 4 if you're playing the full 3-round game.
Right.
So, but there are 9 per neighborhood in the box. And I have a small expansion that adds 1 tenant per neighborhood for a total of 10. So every game you play is different because all those tenants are going to be different every single game.
Right. So lots of replayability, lots of variety there, and with the bonus tiles as well. Maybe we could talk about what
Yes.
happens at the end of at the end of each round in terms of scoring the different areas and the corruption in relation to other players. How that all works.
Absolutely. Let's actually talk about the end of the game because that's probably cleanest in
Yep.
terms of like how. So what happens at the end of the game is first off at the end of each round, as I mentioned, there's a benefit for tallest building, and you do that per neighborhood. So you look at each of the colorful neighborhoods, and you notice there's 5 on the board. In each neighborhood, you're going to look at tallest building. Tallest building gets at the end of the game. Tallest building is 3 points. Second tallest is 2 points. Third tallest is 1 point. Those bonuses are smaller earlier in the game, but the biggest one is at the end of the game. So you're going to do that in the first neighborhood, East Gardens. You're going to do the next one in Harborside, and then the next one in downtown. Go through all 5 neighborhoods and get those bonuses. And then you'll do it in City Center, and then you'll do the bonus one more time for the tallest buildings in the whole game on the board. So you're going to score twice, that bonus twice, if you have the tallest building in the game. Now you might be wondering what happens in case of a tie. In case of a tie, all ties in the game are ultra friendly, and that's one of those rules that has a lot of wild implications. So, for example, if I have a 7 and you have a 7, and Nikki has a 5, then you and I would get 3 points and Nikki would get 2 points. But if you have 2 7s and I have a 5, you'd get 6 points because your buildings both score the 3-point bonus. So if you can get all 3 buildings of the same height in a neighborhood, at the end of the game, you're going to score 9 bonus points. So that's really good.
Right.
So there's a little bit of bonus for being super coordinated in what you do and getting exactly right. There's some really interesting stuff in the game. So yeah, those ultra friendly bonuses are really critical to the game. They open up all sorts of interesting things.
Can we take a look at the corruption track? I want to point out something that messed me up a bit. So if you want to do a
close-up on the corruption track, that would be really cool because it's going to point something out that's really interesting, which people sometimes think is a typo at first, but it's not. See, the corruption track is the one that runs in the middle. That's the one that starts with a briefcase. In the standard and intro games, everybody starts with a -2 spot. And then when you gain corruption, you go up the track. You notice there's jumps in the corruption track, like it goes from -4 to -6. That's intentional because at the end of the game, that's how many points you lose if you're on that spot in the track. And additionally, if you have the most corruption, you lose 3 points. And if you have second most corruption, you lose 1 point. And those are slightly different in a 2-player game. In a 2-player game, if you have most corruption, you just lose 2 points. And the other player doesn't lose anything. And if there's a tie, remember ties are ultra friendly. So if it's a 3-player game and 2 players are tied for most corruption, they both get the 3-point penalty. That's another implication of corruption that you got to watch out for.
Yeah, and one other thing I think is really cool is that you included 3 different game modes. So if you're just either playing for the first time or just want a shorter game, maybe a quicker game, or maybe you want a longer game, there are 3 different game modes that you can choose to play. And they'll each vary in length.
Yeah. If you're learning the game with 3 or 4 players, I highly recommend playing the intro game. It's not nerfed in any way. It just means that some of the decisions that require you to know the game at the start are taken out. So that you can start the game quickly with the ground rolling, hitting the ground rolling. And then if you play the standard game, that means that instead of the game telling you where you start, you get to draft where you start. And it helps to play the intro game to play the standard game. And then there's the full game, which is how you play in the solo or 2-player game, but it's an option in the 3 or 4-player game. And that's the full 3 rounds. And that is, I really like playing that way. But with 3 or 4 players, it could stretch over 2 hours, which is why I put in the standard game to make sure you had a sub 2-hour version. And a lot of people really like the standard game.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think, yeah, it'll kind of like be personal preference there. Because some people might want
Yeah,
to do the
absolutely.
3 times around and really get used to all the different tenant powers and demolishing buildings like I like to do.
Yeah, as we established. And there are things you can do in the full game that you can't do in the standard game, like the way like you handle corruption in the full game is really interesting because you can do like a real high corruption strategy. Like don't like get a bunch of corruption in the first 2 rounds, and in the third round work to lose corruption. And there's not enough time for that in the 2 round game. There's still a lot of cool things you can do in a 2 round game. But I made some modifications so you can still go high corruption in a 2 round
Right.
game, but it's a different strategy than in the 3 round game. So there's extra game space to explore in that full game.
Cool. And I think we have to also, because Nikki has the box up here, talk about the gorgeous
Yes.
artwork from Kwanchai Moria. It's such a
Quanchai did
beautiful
an
box.
amazing job.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
wonderful job. So yeah, that's
I
all
love it.
Quan Chai's art on the box, on the board, and on the
It's
buildings.
great.
That's all Quan Chai. Also, shout out to Heiko Ginther. I can't pronounce his last name correctly. He always gives me grief for it. Gunther. No, I'm not going to say. I'm just going to say Gunther, and he's going to have to live with it. So Heiko did an amazing job with the graphic design, and so everything is like super clear and crisp and easy to read, which
Right.
is an important thing in this game. Kind of game like this that throws a lot of information your way. Heiko's really good at
Right.
distilling that and just making you understand it.
Right. Yeah. It's really well done, and I think other people have mentioned it before who have been posting some reviews about High Rise, but I share the opinion that this game looks crazy when you first see it and set it up, but it's really like once you get into it, it's pretty smooth and easy to understand, but like definitely interesting choices. And again, I love the variety from the different tenant tiles that you put out every game. It's really interesting.
Yep. So I'll be
Well,
demoing this all weekend on the Formal Fair Discord. We have an implementation of the game on Tabletopia, so we'd be happy to show you the game on Tabletopia. The game is also out and available if you go to my website formalferretgames.com, or you go to any reputable game store, and some disreputable game stores will also have it. Some reputable game stores don't have it, and just ask them to order it, and I'm sure they can get their hands on it.
cool. Well, thank you so much, Gil, for showing us High Rise, this Formal Ferret Games. Check it out, everybody.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Candace, Nikki, Lincoln. Thank you so much for your help. And everybody
Yeah.
watching, thanks for watching. And I hope you have a great Gen Con.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.